I thought I was walking into the happiest day of my life. But instead, I walked straight into a trap. All my life, I dreamed of a fairytale wedding. The dress, the flowers, the promises of forever. And there I was, in a white gown with trembling hands, walking down the aisle toward the man I thought I loved. But from the very moment our eyes met, something felt wrong. His gaze was cold, sharp, like a blade pressed against my skin. It wasn't the gaze of a man in love. It was the gaze of a man who owned me. When he took my hand, I tried to smile. The guests clapped. But my heart pounded, screaming a warning that no one else could hear. Then came the vows. The words that should have bound us together in love. Instead, chained me to a stranger. Because the man who stood across from me wasn't who he claimed to be. He wasn't the kind-hearted fiancé who whispered promises under the stars. He wasn't the man who swore to protect me. No. He was something else. Something darker. The truth hit me like thunder. He was a Mafia heir, born into blood, power, and secrets I couldn't even begin to understand. And I had just married him. The crowd cheered as he leaned closer. His lips brushed against my ear, but his whisper wasn't sweet. It was a warning. You belong to me now. My chest tightened. My breath caught. I wanted to scream, to run, but his grip on me was iron. I wasn't a bride. I was his captive. And yet, beneath the fear in my eyes, a spark of defiance stirred. I wasn't as weak as I looked. And one day, he would realize that marrying me was the biggest mistake of his life. Because this was not the end of my story. This was only the beginning. The night after the wedding, I discovered the first of his deadly secrets. If you're watching right now, just hit like, share it with as many people as you can, and don't forget to watch till the end. The night after the wedding, everything felt unreal. The flowers were gone. The music had faded. The guests had left. But I was still here, in a mansion that didn't feel like home, married to a man who felt like a stranger. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the diamond ring on my finger. It sparkled under the light, but to me, it looked more like a chain. That's when I heard it. A soft knock at the door. Slow. Measured. Almost as if whoever stood outside already knew I was afraid. My heart raced as the door creaked open. And there he was. My new husband. The Mafia heir. But gone was the fury in his eyes. Instead, he looked, almost amused. He didn't say a word at first. He just stood there, watching me. Then he finally spoke. You look like you've seen a ghost. I wanted to snap back, to tell him he was the ghost, haunting the life I once dreamed of. But the words froze in my throat. Because just then, something caught my eye. Behind him, two men carried in a large wooden chest. They set it down carefully, bowed, and disappeared. The chest was beautiful, carved with golden patterns. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it held more than just riches. He stepped closer, his voice low. Open it. My fingers trembled as I reached for the latch. Part of me wanted to refuse, to run. But curiosity pulled me in. The lid creaked open. And inside, wasn't money. Wasn't weapons. Wasn't danger. It was a collection of photographs. Hundreds of them. And every single one was of me. I gasped, my knees nearly giving out. Photos of me walking to school, sitting at cafes, even standing at the bus stop on rainy days. Moments I thought no one had noticed, he had captured them all. I looked up at him in shock. Why do you have these? His lips curved into a slow, confident smile. Because, bride. I chose you long before you ever said yes. My heart pounded louder than ever. I didn't know whether to be terrified or flattered. But one thing was certain. My story with him was only getting started. The next morning, I made my first mistake, and it nearly cost me my freedom. Sunlight spilled into the room as if nothing had happened. But I knew better. I wasn't waking up to a fairy tale. I was waking up to a secret. The chest of photographs still haunted me. Why me? Why had he chosen me, out of all the women in the world? I slipped quietly out of bed, determined to find answers. The mansion was vast, its hallways stretching like a maze. And for the first time since the wedding, I was alone. Or so I thought. I crept down a grand staircase, my gown brushing against the polished floor. That's when I spotted it, an unlocked door at the end of the corridor. Curiosity pulled me closer. Inside was a study filled with books, maps, and files stacked high. But what caught my attention was the desk. On it lay a black leather notebook. And on the cover, my name. My fingers tingled as I opened it. Page after page was filled with details about my life. My favorite food, my friends, even the cafe I visited every Saturday. It was as if he had memorized me long before we met. Then, suddenly, the notebook was ripped from my hands. I spun around, and there he was. My husband. His jaw clenched, eyes blazing with something between anger and amusement. "Curious, aren't you?" he said softly. I swallowed hard, my voice barely a whisper. Why do you know so much about me?" For a moment, he didn't answer. He just studied me, as if deciding how much truth I deserved. Then, slowly, he leaned closer. "Because," he said, his voice low and deliberate, "I don't believe in chance. I believe in destiny. And you, bride. You are mine." My breath caught in my chest. Was it obsession? Was it love? Or was it something far more dangerous? I didn't know. But one thing was clear. In this game of fate, I had just made my first mistake. And now, he knew it. That night, he made me an offer, one that could change everything. He sat across from me at the dining table, and, for the first time since the wedding, he offered something that sounded almost reasonable. "I'll make you a deal," he said, calm as if he were offering tea instead of fate. "Come with me to one event, just one, and play the part of my wife. Do that, and I will give you something you've wanted since we met." My stomach flipped. What could he possibly give me that would make me agree to his rules? "A week of freedom," he said simply. "You can leave the house every day. You can meet people. You can go where you want. No guards watching your every move. But you will come to the gala with me and smile. That's all." I stared at him. A week of being myself, the thought felt like sunlight after a long storm. So I said yes. The next morning felt like a rehearsal for a play I never auditioned for. He trained me how to walk into a crowded room as his wife, how to accept compliments without flinching, how to laugh when it mattered. He corrected my posture, coached my smile, and did it all with that patient, unsettling calm that made my heart race. There were awkward moments that made me want to burst out laughing, him fussing over my hair, me giggling when he pronounced champagne wrong, but there were also quiet ones that landed heavy. A hand lingering at the small of my back, a look that softened his entire face. On the day of the gala, I stood before a mirror feeling like a stranger who had borrowed someone else's life. I had agreed to be his wife for an evening, and in return, I would taste freedom for a week. I walked into the ballroom on his arm, the chandeliers sparkling like 1,000 curious eyes. But before I could convince myself this was merely a performance, I noticed a woman across the room, watching us with an expression I couldn't read. Her smile was small. Her eyes were calculating. And when she raised her glass, her lips moved in a quick, almost private motion, "Welcome home." At the gala, a stranger's recognition turned the night into something I never expected. The gala hummed with music, polite laughter, and a sea of faces that looked important and practiced. I clung to the calm I'd been coached to wear, but under it my heart felt like a drum. He guided me through introductions, diplomats, donors, people with names that tasted like power. I repeated the lines he'd taught me, smiled when I should smile, listened when I should listen. It felt strange, and oddly thrilling, to play a part so convincingly. Then the woman who had watched us approached. She moved with the ease of someone used to being seen. As she drew closer, I felt a flutter of something, interest. Warning, that I couldn't place. "Beautiful night," she said, polite and warm. "You look perfect beside him." Her voice was friendly, but when she bowed slightly, the intensity in her eyes made the compliment feel like a test. We exchanged pleasantries. She spoke of charities and travel and places I'd never been. She laughed at the right moments. I smiled back, careful. After she left, he leaned toward me and whispered, "She's an old friend. Don't read into it." But her words echoed in my head, "Welcome home." Later, standing on a balcony with the city lights below, he surprised me by doing something no one expected. He danced with me, a slow, private sway amid the glitter. For a moment, everything softened. The music wrapped around us, and his hands were warm and steady. We laughed quietly. He told me a story from his childhood, something small and human that made me forget, for a heartbeat, the chest of photos and the study with my name on its notebook. Just when I started to believe there might be something gentler beneath his fierce facade, my phone buzzed in my clutch. A message. One line. "Do not trust the smile," it read. No name. No number I recognized. Just those 4 words. I looked up at him. He was watching the crowd, unaware, or pretending to be. I wanted to ask him, to demand answers. Instead, I slipped the phone back into my bag and swallowed the doubt. Because in a room full of people who pretended easily, who was pretending to protect me, and who was pretending to belong. The anonymous message was only the beginning. Someone wanted me warned, and now I had to choose who to trust. The anonymous message wouldn't leave my mind. Do not trust the smile. Whose smile? His? Hers? Or someone else entirely? For the rest of the gala, I forced myself to move through the crowd like nothing had happened. I laughed when expected, nodded when required, even raised my glass in polite toasts. But inside, I replayed every glance, every laugh, every curve of a lip that might be hiding a secret. Later that night, back at the mansion, I sat on the edge of my bed still in my gown. My phone lay in my hand, screen blank, but my heart raced like it might light up again with more warnings. That's when I heard it, 3 quiet knocks on my door. Not his knock. Someone else's. I opened the door just a crack, and found a folded piece of paper slipped under it. No messenger in sight. No footsteps in the hall. Just silence. I picked it up, unfolded it, and froze. Scrawled in quick, uneven handwriting were 5 words. Your freedom comes at a cost. My breath caught. Was this a threat? A warning? Or a promise? Before I could decide, the door swung open. He walked in without hesitation, his expression unreadable. His eyes flicked to the paper in my hand, and I saw a shadow of something cross his face. Surprise, maybe even recognition. He reached for it, but I pulled it back, tucking it behind me. Who's sending these? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. For a moment, he didn't answer. Then he leaned closer, his tone low and steady. The better question is, who do you believe? And with that, he left the room as swiftly as he entered, leaving me with more questions than answers. As I sat alone, the warning replayed in my mind, do not trust the smile. But whose smile would betray me first? The notes kept coming, and one of them led me to a secret I was never meant to find. The next morning, I woke to find another note, this time, neatly placed on my bedside table. I hadn't heard anyone enter. I hadn't felt a thing. But the paper was there waiting. 4 words, written in the same hurried scrawl. Look behind the portrait. My gaze swept the room until it landed on a giant painting that dominated the wall across from my bed. A family crest, bold and intimidating. I hesitated. My deal with him had earned me a week of freedom, not secret treasure hunts in his mansion. But curiosity. Curiosity was stronger than caution. That afternoon, while he was on a call in his study, I slipped back into my room and stood before the painting. My hands trembled as I pushed it aside. Behind the canvas was a small latch. I pulled it. A hidden compartment slid open. Inside was a leather-bound journal, edges worn, pages yellowed. My name wasn't on it, but the initials on the cover were his. I flipped it open, expecting I don't even know what. Instead, I found sketches. Dozens of them. Faces, places, little details of life. But one sketch stopped me cold. It was me. My face. Drawn with a softness I had never seen from him in real life. I snapped the journal shut, my heart pounding. Was this obsession? Or something else entirely? Before I could hide the journal back, the door opened. He stood there, silent, his eyes dropping to the journal in my hand. For once, his usual calm shattered. He stepped forward, his voice sharper than ever. You weren't supposed to find that. I clutched the journal tighter, my mind racing. The notes, the warnings, had they led me here on purpose? And if so, who wanted me to know his secret? The journal revealed more than sketches. It held a truth that could change everything between us. I held the journal against my chest like a shield, as if the leather cover could protect me from the storm in his eyes. You weren't supposed to find that, he repeated, his voice quieter this time, but tighter, almost vulnerable. I opened the journal again, flipping past the sketches of strangers and places I didn't recognize, until I landed back on me. My face, captured in different moments, drawn from memory. Smiling. Thinking. Even crying. These are me, I whispered. Why? For the first time since I'd met him, he didn't have an immediate answer. His jaw tightened, his eyes darkened, and then he sighed as if admitting something costly. Because I needed to remember you, he said softly. Before you ever stepped into this house, before you wore that gown, before any of this. I had already drawn you. My heart stuttered. Before. He reached out, gently closing the journal in my hands. Some things you're not ready to know. But my mind wouldn't stop spinning. Who had left the notes? Why lead me here? And what did it mean that I had been in his world before I even knew it? That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling until dawn, the journal hidden under my pillow. When I finally dozed off, it wasn't for long, because the moment I woke, another note had appeared. This one was short. Only 3 words. Ask about Paris. Paris. I had never been to Paris. But somehow, the thought of that city on his lips made my pulse race with a mix of fear and anticipation. What secret tied me to Paris? And why was someone so desperate for me to uncover it? To be continued.